Hello, Tad. A huge, warm welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much. Good to be here.
Oh, so good to have you back. The last episode we did together, well, we just went down incredibly well with everyone. I think that conversation we had, which was about community, really, I think we were speaking about things that often aren't spoken about. And this actually feels like quite a nice, unintentional kind of part two, actually, isn't it? Like, I know the way you speak about niche is your role in the community. So actually, this is rather beautifully quite a part two.
That's good.
Would you
Yeah,
agree?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
um, so this conversation come about because I saw a really cool, I think it was a video. I think it was a video, it may have been a written post, but I think it was a video where you're talking about how your niche, I think you were saying your niche is made up of your gifts, your wounds, and your nature. And I really loved the way you were talking about that. And it's, as I was saying to you just now, it's very akin to the work, much of the work that we do at Wake in the Wild. So I was like, oh yes, this is going to be a really cool conversation we can have on that topic. So before we go into each of those three things, would you mind just doing a bit of a, I guess, even though we would have spoken about this in probably both of our previous, we've had, I think, two, maybe three conversations before. You definitely would have said this before, but just to bring us up to date, when you're talking about your niche and then it being through the lens of those three things, what do you mean as a whole?
Well, okay. I mean, as you said, uh, my definition of niche is your role in the community. So it's more verb than noun. It's a sort of function that you play. It's something that you're doing in the community. And then
You're
if we,
niching all the time as opposed to it being one fixed thing.
yeah,
Mm,
and yeah, it's a sort of a job description.
mm,
Like elder in a community is a function. It's something that you do. It's not an identity. Uh,
mm.
it's a it's a job that's to be
Yes.
done.
Hmm.
And so if we translate then that to business, we have sort of what's the role in the marketplace that you want to be known for? What's the reputation that you want to have? What is this job that people, oh, if you need that job done, you go to this person. And the challenge that I see a lot in the sort of coaching holistic world, a lot of service providers, is the conversation about niching has been very sequestered into who do we reach? And so there's the, by now, I think, fairly common formulation of, how blank kind of people struggle with blank problem. I help them get blank results. And I'm for that. It's a useful tool, but there's, first of all, there's more to the conversation about who we work with than just that. And there's more to niching than just who we're working with. And
Mm,
so, we could imagine on one level, there's a Venn diagram of those six things, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And all of
mm,
those have a lot to say about niching. It could be what you do that nobody else does it. It could be where you do it and nobody else does that thing where you live. It could be when you do it. Your hours are different in some way, or the seasons you work are different than others, or why you do it. It's tied to a larger cause that separates you from other folks, or even how you do it. The methodology, the approach, your aesthetic, your style could be different. So there's a much larger conversation about niche. All of those things are a part of the role that you play. But then one day, this just kind of came, and I'm not probably good not to get fundamentalist about this because this just sort of appeared to me whole cloth, these three things. And I just recorded a video about it. And so there's no doubt there's more than these three. But um, as I've revisited it, it feels solid enough to work with.
mm.
So the three are, it struck me that our niche is a combination of three things. And this is, I would say also, this is particularly for people in the healing arts, in the world of coaching, in that service provider world, but it's really leaning on people who are doing that healing work
Mm.
at some level.
And would you agree this is particularly true for those who, they may not use this exact languaging, but they're kind of doing their soul work? they're doing what they really feel that they were here to do,
Yeah.
as opposed to something they could do, but isn't what they were uniquely suited to do.
Yes. Yeah, I would say so. And certainly that could be something in the trades. And I don't know if all of
Like
these would,
artists, for example, but maybe, yeah, okay, I'll be quiet.
yeah. So it's this probably has limited application, but where the application is, it's a very useful set of three lenses. So these are the three things we look at to hone our niche. We look at our gifts, our nature, and our wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it seemed to me that the gifts really give the shape of the wound. Some people are just, or give the shape of the niche, the kind of structure of it, the architecture of it. Some people are really gifted at, body work, or some people are really gifted at listening, or some people are really gifted at hosting people, or there's all sorts of things. And we know it's a gift because it comes so easily, and we're always baffled when other people struggle with it. It's like, what do you mean that's hard? All you do is this. No problem. So there are other people that do a lot of work around gifts, and maybe you do in your own work. This isn't something I've focused on, but you've got the Strengths Finder book. There's a lot of people that do the work around your identifying your sacred gift, and I've seen amazing quizzes and assessments that you can do to figure out what your gifts are. And it's so helpful because people will try to build a business around something they're just not that good at. Public speaking, they don't like it. It's not their thing. They just sort of shrink in front of people. And yet some marketing coach told them, well, that's what you have to do. You have to just go give talks everywhere. But they would much rather, their thing is more, they're very gifted, let's say, in the one-on-one conversation. They're very present. I'm thinking of a friend of mine in Edmonton who, when she talks to people, she's so present. It's amazing. And she would just die in front of people. So it's not a gift of hers to do that. Whereas for me, being in front of people has always been easy. I've always loved it. So we all have different strengths in that way. And I think some of them are just built in. Some of those are inherent. We just came with it. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about gifts, not that you're skillful at it, but that it brings you alive and it's really easy for you to do.
Yes, I love that. Why do you use the word shape for that?
Because if your business has to have a shape, and the shape of it might be that you lead live workshops. The shape of it might be that you write things and get paid for it.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like even structures at the business model level. Well, Alex Baisley, who I think you know as well, bigdreamprogram.com helps people figure out what the hell they're going to do with their life. And one of the things he said to me is, when you're looking at your business model, you always start with the lifestyle you want to have. And then you back your business model into that. So this has the gift thing, I think, has a lot to do with that. Well, how do you want to spend your days? And I would suggest if you can spend your days employing your gifts, you will be more effective at what you do, and you will enjoy your life a lot more.
I love this. And I think what you're talking about here in terms of, I don't know, like public speaking versus one-to-one. I think this covers both in terms of how, and often these things, I think we put these hard lines between this is marketing and this is actually delivering whatever it is. And
Right.
more and more I see that, I think when we're truly doing what's right for us, when we're truly living that shape, there's less and less kind of division between the two in terms of there may be in terms of the intention, but actually the what it is very similar, as in the example you've said. I love working kind of in groups, one-to-many, and it actually really suits me, hence probably why I do a podcast, but it's also how I really like working with people in a group, in a circle setting. And I think So would you agree that that's the case often, both in terms of the way you would market and also the way you would deliver whatever it is you do also is sourced in your gifts?
Yeah, that's a good catch. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this is a really important point, because I've noticed certainly a lot of our clients have come from the kind of mainstream coaching world, where there is almost like there is a way to do things, and particularly
Right.
there's a way to market, and you need to do X, Y, and Z on social media. And as they enter the work that we do, there's a real kind of like deconditioning needed, where it's like, if you don't love, like I love, like similar to you, you know, I love to just create, I love to express, you know, in writing, talking, that just comes naturally to me. It's not something I'm doing because it's marketing. It just, I do that because that's how I live. Whereas for others, that really is not natural to them, but they felt that they have to do that because that's the thing to do. And so I love what you're saying here. It's like, if that isn't naturally part of your gifts, then you're kind of forcing yourself into a shape that isn't actually right for you.
Yeah, it's you know, the most effective form of exercise in the world. They've identified it, you know, and actually it's the best exercise almost no matter what your goals are. And it's the exercise that you'll do.
Do you know, funny enough, I've used that phrase about 5 different times just in the last 2 weeks. I don't generally, but I have just recently, weirdly. The real synchronicity there, because that applies to literally pretty much everything in life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if theoretically it's better if you won't do it. Is hosting a podcast a great form of marketing? Absolutely. But what if you won't do it? What if it's just one of those things you're going to keep procrastinating on? Because what you really want to do is be live in person, networking, you know, just out in the community meeting people. It's madness when people
Yes.
take a tactic that they it grinds against them rather than a tactic that is, oh my God, that could be marketing, which is often what I hear. People like, oh, you know, it's like you could host parties. That could be marketing. That could be one of the best forms of marketing there is. And it never
Mm.
occurs to people. And I remember I was visiting some friends on a farm in Northern Ontario in the Ottawa Valley. And one of them did timber framing, one of them was a hide tanner, and one of them did deep etymology around language, and the other one beekeeping. And as I was talking about marketing, at one point one of them looked at me, he's like, that's marketing? You know, and maybe I was just saying about giving a talk on something or just writing your philosophy and your beliefs about why you do what you do. And because so often when we look at marketing, there's this sense of I could never do that. I don't want to be like those people. I don't want to come across like, so I could never, no, I could never do that. And when you find a kind of marketing that's aligned with your gifts, it's like, oh, I could do that. That's
Yes.
easy. That's
Mm.
no problem. And of course, that has immense practical consequences on your business. Because if you pick or have selected for you a form of marketing that you won't do, it never looks like you're avoiding it. You know, it just looks like you're busy doing other things.
Mm.
And the consequence of being busy doing other things and never dealing with that is you have no clients. Uh, you know, and so at the very practical level, if you want paying clients, you have to market. You have to be doing something that makes it easier for people to find you and to pay attention to you and to lower the risk of them taking that first step. You got to do something in order for that to happen. And if the thing that you've picked you won't do, well, then you're not doing any marketing, and it just
Yes.
it
Mm.
doesn't work. So yes, it's a big deal both in the delivery for the fulfillment of the work and the sustainability of the work. Because also, if you pick a form of working, like I had a dear friend of mine, a colleague, who said, "I'm so tired of one-on-one. I don't want to do one-on-one." I said, well, that could be true. I said, but two other things to check out. First, one, are you actually filtering to make sure these are the people you want to work with?
Mm.
Because maybe you're working with people who just aren't a fit, and that's why. And number two, I said, the thing I've heard you say so many times is, oh, we get to the end of the hour and we're just digging in. So why are you doing hour-long sessions? Why not do a 3-hour deep dive? And that's your thing. I do 2 of those a day or 1 a day, and you just charge commensurately. And you say, but we really get in there, and we'll accomplish more in 3 hours than we would in like 3 1-hour sessions. And oh, it could be like that. I could do that. So, her gift, some people do have the gift for coaching, like a real precision. They can, and other people have other gifts, maybe a slower, deeper wondering, and just good to notice what's true about us.
Yeah. I love the I guess permission and reminder in this conversation, in that, and you're going to be even more familiar with this than I am, in that I think many people's relationship to marketing is so wounded and so like, oh, it's like this horrible thing. I have to do it. I've got to make myself do it. It's not meant to feel good. I've just got to somehow force myself to do it. And I think what's in this conversation is the realization, like, no, actually, like the right marketing for you will actually just feel like a natural expression of your gifts. And that's totally possible. It's not going to feel like that when you are doing a kind of marketing that isn't right for you. In fact, can I just give you a quick story about what you said about the comparison of podcasts? Because I've noticed this come up over and over and over again with clients, where because they know that I've been now podcasting for nearly 9 years, pretty much every week. So in terms of like the exercise you'll do, it turns out that, lo and behold, I will podcast. And, it's not to say there haven't been times where I've thought, gosh, I've got to get out this week's podcast. And, there's been times where I've had, resistance come up, but it seems as though one way or another, I've moved past that resistance, and more, and certainly in the last 3 years, I've got to a place where it's just something I love. It's turned out to be an amazing form of marketing. That wasn't the initial intention. It's not even really the conscious intention now. I just love doing it. I get to have amazing conversation with people like you. So it's something that our clients can look at and think, oh, that must be the right way to market. That must be, really effective, amazing way to market. Completely missing exactly what you're saying. Like, if this isn't something that comes naturally to you, if it's not one of your gifts, you likely won't do it. You'll likely kind of do it for a while, give up, or if you do continue, it'll be just like, dragging yourself through it. Whereas conversely, some people, like you're saying, work really well in a kind of, turning up at a kind of some kind of party, making conversation. That is my idea of hell. I'm autistic. The idea of making small talk, it's like I would just literally stand there, hiding in the corner, like snacking on whatever I could find, hoping no one talks to me. Like that would be my worst form of marketing ever. Whereas for some people, it comes so naturally, like, do that.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, I remember a woman at a workshop in and in some ways this gift, of course, overlaps. This is a Venn diagram with our nature, which maybe we can talk about next. But like, if somebody's extremely introverted versus extroverted, that's their nature, but it also will show up and affect the gifts and the way those gifts appear, or the tone of those gifts. I remember a woman in Toronto, and she was one of the most extroverted people I know. In like, she was also like taking over the room just with her presence. She was just always engaging with other people, and tons of eye contact. And I was just like, and then she was talking to me about her online marketing strategy, and I looked at her, I was like, why are you not just going to events all the time, meeting people? Like, what is up with this online thing? You're clearly a people person. And she hated the online thing, but thought she had to do it. But so yeah, so this, and I'll just say also, for anyone if you're feeling like, oh, marketing just feels terrible, if you go to marketingforhippies.com/steps, there's what I call these 5 fundamentals. The first one is ethics. And so just, if broadly speaking, marketing feels terrible, there's just a bunch of free resources there on that. Okay. But so we've got the gifts, and then the second is your nature. Yeah, and some people,
would you remind me, do you describe that as like your tone or the feel? How do you describe that?
Well, it affects the tone of your work. Now,
Mm.
partly this is the Myers-Briggs, there's a lot of these personality tests, the DISC model, there's all the color thing, there's all sorts of personality profiles, maybe
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram, all this. And it's worth knowing ourselves and knowing what our
Mm.
natures are. Because, for example, some people are, their nature is, they just love being around people and being social, and other people just want to be a hermit.
Mm.
And that's good to know about yourself. Some people are very gentle, and some people are very aggressive, and fiery. Yeah, some people soft, some fiery. People, I think, are just kind of born with a certain nature to them. As parents often attest, they have 5 kids, and
Mm.
every one of them came in with some different personality. Some like to be on stage, and the kid is just born with this, and then other ones born very demure and shy, and who knows why? Who knows where this comes from? But we seem to. I remember hearing somebody saying when they talked about soul, they used the word soul synonymously with personality. Like we just come in with something. We come in with a
Mm.
personality, and maybe that personality was in a different body. Maybe that's the whole reincarnation gig. It's still you. It's the exact same personality in a different culture, at a different time, in a different body. Who knows? It's just worth noting that there are certain things that seem to be true about us, not just in terms of what we're good at, but just how we are in the world. Uh, and, we all know people who are just very brash, and that's just always been them.
Mm.
They're just outspoken. They say the incorrect thing at the wrong time, and but they just call it like it is, and they don't suffer fools. And there's other people who would never, ever dream of speaking in that way. Um, yeah, I've met people who have this just fiery passion about them. And then there's other people who don't seem to have that, who are kind of emotionally more flatline, and neutral. And they've always been like this. Some people, anyway, you get the idea. So it's just that will affect the tone of our work. And I remember a call I had with a woman she was in Toronto. She's a hypnotherapist. And her website was very blue colors and waterfalls and gentle, la la la, peaceful and all this. But when I talked to her, she was so fiery and passionate. And I could, it was, and her photo on the website, funnily enough, had more of a reddish hue and had this kind of smoldering, bordering on sexual, like it was just, it didn't fit. The photo didn't fit. So I was
Mm.
confused, and I was talking with her.
Yeah, like which of these two is she? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I was really trying to figure it out. It's like, was this just a photographer, and is this just how
Mm.
the photo session went, and you're not normally like this, because that can be true, or yeah. And after talking with her, I said, so here's the deal: the photo is true,
Yeah.
and the website is not. You are so
Mm.
fiery, and she was fiery with me because I was late for the call. I said, this is just you're so fiery, and then she got so shy. She's like, oh, but that's always gotten me in so much trouble. And
Oh, yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
said, but look, here's the deal. There are a lot of women who need to be more in touch with that fiery side. And this seems to come very easy for you. So I know it's gotten you in a lot of trouble, but the lack of fire has gotten a lot of women in trouble too. And maybe you could be the one to help them with that. Maybe this is
Mm.
part of what you bring. And she'd just seen her nature as a handicap, something
Mm.
getting in the way, as opposed to it actually providing the way for her. And so our natures give a real tone. My colleague
Yeah.
Carrie Klassen, Klassen, she does copywriting, and she has a very particular aesthetic tone vibe, um, you know, to her work, and it's different than mine. It's different than a lot of other marketing people. So that's worth noting. And then this third is the wound.
Oh, can I just pause you
Yeah.
there? Um, And I actually feel like the wound is quite a nice segue in a moment anyway, because certainly a lot of the work that we do, and the work we do in Wake and Wild Medicine in particular, is very focused on everything we're talking about here, where it's like there absolutely is this like who we are, like at the deepest level that we were born with. And then because of experience, because of conditioning, our wounds can kind of contort that, make us kind of hide it, make us prove it. Just like the example you gave with the hypnotherapist, where, you know, she naturally has this fire, and then has been, you know, she's received wounding that's shown her, you know, it's going to get me into trouble, and therefore she's kind of got this uneasy relationship. And then you naturally kind of went into, and, you know, there's lots of women that really benefit from this, which I felt was a really beautiful segue into the wound. So I'd like to explore that in a moment, as you're about to. But before we go any further, I think there was a couple of things that I wanted to ask you. Firstly, how would you describe your own nature? Like, because I think given listeners are going to have some familiarity with you and your work, like how would you describe your nature and how that translates into the work you do?
I'm fucking hilarious.
I laugh on cue.
I I think I'm funny, but I'm also fairly, sometimes this is worth noting. You don't, other people tell you what your nature is. It's sometimes we're the last to know.
Totally, which is why these like personality quizzes and stuff are actually quite useful.
Yeah. And reflections from groups of people in workshops and it can be helpful. The thing I've been hearing a lot is like, wow, you're so chill. You're so I don't know, like low key. You're so relaxed around this stuff. You're so at ease or something. And I think that is becoming more and more true of me. But yeah, so I think that's been part of it. That there's a kind of, and it's not informal, but casual. There's a sort
I
of,
suppose hippie is kind of
yeah,
fairly apt, isn't
it's,
it?
it's like my videos are not super polished. They're not slick. They're not that. It's unscripted, and yeah, so there's something about that. I would say that this is what people have told me, and that resonates with me. That makes sense. And of course, our natures have downsides. It's not just your nature is just, it's all roses, because your nature being really chill, there are times where you need to be something other than chill. And this is where you should get support in your business. This is,
Yes, beautifully said. Yeah. Same with
you
your
know,
gifts as well, isn't it? There's always going to be places where the more we can be fully accepting and aware and responsible for all of these aspects of ourselves, the more we can say, okay, well, there is a gap there. I'll get support to, account for that gap.
hey,
Nothing wrong with myself. It's just, I'm human. I'm going to have gaps, but I can hire someone in or partner with someone or whatever it is. So someone else who can fill that gap beautifully can.
because the alternative to that is trying to fill a lot of roles you're not qualified for.
Yes.
Doing things that are not your nature and it's not your gift. And that is a recipe for struggle. Like if you're not good at bookkeeping, there are people, not just they're good at it, they love it.
Yeah, which is like to me,
yeah,
but yeah, apparently
totally.
they exist.
You may not like administrative work, and there are people that's, oh my God, organizing pencils and spreadsheets is the most satisfying thing they've ever done in their life. And thank God, because that's not all of us. Yeah. And similarly, you might really enjoy the administrative stuff, but God, you got to sell. And then you get a business partner who loves being on stage, who can do the pitch, who enjoys it. And that's easy for them. And it's like, oh, thank God. Can you just go talk to the people? Can you go to the networking event? Because like I don't want to. And they do. And it helps the business. So it's worth knowing what our gifts are and what our nature is. And as you point out, sometimes we are punished at young ages for our gifts and for our nature. and that can be either you're too outgoing, so you get punished for that, or you're too shy. Hey, get out there. You gotta, meet people. You gotta, whatever it was. But we can be punished for those things, and it leaves us with no real sense of what they are. And so we don't actually have a sense of what feels good. This is one of the most telling things, is, and this has been happening a bunch lately, where the question people come to me with is one I actually can't answer. It's not what I do. But the question is basically this: what should I want?
Mm.
Yeah, it's said in a lot of different ways, but like,
Yes.
who
Like, I
should I?
don't know what I want. Yeah, I don't know what's
Yeah,
aligned.
like the question usually sounds more like this: how do I prioritize all the things?
Mm.
And the question is not just a structural, is there a mechanical way to, because I'll give that. I'll say, here's some options of how you can prioritize things. But the real question is, what should my priorities be?
Yeah, I love that.
Translation, what do I want? And what that tells me is that they are out of touch with what they actually want. They actually
Yeah.
don't know what's most important to them. There's the old adage, we always have time for what's most important to us. Always. If we know what's most important to us. And most of the time, in the modern society, we don't. Another
Yeah.
way to look at that is, this question, there's that book, Pleasure Activism, and this is, coming out a lot more. And there's some dodgy elements to it, but the very true thing, it seems, from not having delved into it a lot, is if you don't know what feels good, that's a real problem. If you can't make that fundamental discernment about what you really want to say yes to, it makes it almost impossible to say no, because no, in favor of what? And so this is the people pleasing. This is where we just end up living our lives, because at least that gets us some benefit, pleasing other
Yeah.
people. But you get older and older, and it feels worse and worse because something is off, and you can't even put your finger on it. And there's probably a lot of things that are off, but two of them are: you're living a life that is completely out of alignment with your nature, and you're living a life that is not an expression of your gifts. And that's a very painful thing. And we can take the nature thing even deeper to human nature. We have a
Yes.
we have a Paleolithic nervous system in a technocratically advancing world. And the nervous system hasn't changed while the world has. And so in that way, we're suddenly living completely outside of our nature. We're wired for village and connection with nature and natural whole foods. And now we're living a life that's anything but that. And then people think, oh, there's something wrong with me. And of course, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. You're just in a system that in no way honors your nature, and in a community that doesn't even know you have gifts to give. My dear friend of mine, Lewis Cardinal, a Cree fellow from Alberta, he said that his elders had told him, he said, when babies come in with their fists like this, all tight, it's because they're coming with something to give us.
Oh, I love that.
So that's the function of culture. One of the major functions is to pay attention to what those gifts are and make sure that they're cultivated.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm so glad you're so right. There's the individual nature, but for so many of us, the human nature is at least as neglected. So true. So I'm going to be a bit unfair now, perhaps, and put you on the spot. As you say, we do best with other people telling us about our nature. What do you know about my nature? What can you tell me about my nature based on what you know of me?
Oh man. I don't know if I know you well enough to say. I know we've had some conversations, but we've not been together in person. So that's a hard one to peg. But my experience of you is somebody who's immensely thoughtful, and that you think things through a lot. You're somebody for whom authenticity and getting things right is very important. Attention to detail, a kind of commitment to alignment. I mean, maybe that's more your values than your nature. Yeah, I would have to spend more time with you, I think, to give a proper answer. But
Okay, well, you need to come to the UK next time, actually follow through. But thank you. I think that's actually a really good point. I love what you've said, by the way, and that aligns very much with things that others have told me. And I think there probably is a strong alignment between our nature and our values. It's probably too much of a tangent to go off to now, given we need to still talk about wounds. But I suspect our values, to some extent, are an expression of our nature.
yeah, that's probably true.
Okay, so as we keep kind of like teasing, there definitely is this the way that our wounds are kind of like, in some ways, like are covering up our nature for many of us, are something that we need to kind of alchemize and really be in the work of healing in order for that to then inform our work. So do your kind of a definition of what you mean by wounds and how it informs your niche.
Well, yeah, I probably use it the same way a lot of people do, this idea of the wounded healer. There's just certain ways that we're hurt in life. And it seems that whereas the gift maybe gives a shape to our work, and our nature provides the sort of tone or the vibe of it, that our wounds often give the direction of our work. And again, this is extra particularly for service providers, and even more so for people in the healing arts, that we often end up getting into the healing work to heal ourselves. There's the old myth of Chiron, the wounded healer, and anyways, there's a little content out there about the wounded healer. People can Google it and find, but that idea seems very true, that our deepest wounds are often a doorway to our truest niche, which is something I heard from Jeffrey Van Dyke. So it's worth looking at what got me into this. What is it that I have overcome in my life that I know something about now, and I think I might be able to help people with. It's very telling, that. And I've seen that over and over again when people come to me, particularly in the healing arts or coaching, and they're struggling with their niche, and I say, well, tell me about your life. Tell me what you've struggled with. Tell me what got you into this. And then when I feed it back to them and say, well, could this maybe be your niche? They're often surprised. Somehow they've never thought about it. And when they hear it, something in them just relaxes. When they hear it, something in them just like, oh my God. And it's a similar thing to like, oh, I could do that type of, I could use my gifts to make money. What? I could do it with that tone. I don't have to do this slick, performative, postury, salesy thing. I can just do it in this. What? It's the same thing with the niche. It's like, wait, I could go in that direction with my work? For real? Do you think there's enough people? Do you think people would want this? It's often, people are scared of niching, but they're relieved when they find their niche. And the wound is often a major thing. But the proviso I want to give here is, and this is in the last week or so, this has really landed for me. And I got this from Lisa Bloom, who does story-coach.com, does a lot of work on storytelling, and she'd be somebody great to bring on to your podcast.
I saw you sharing about her work. Yes, she would indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, and she was talking about, you have to know to share where. That's a big deal. That there's some stories you just share with your friends and your therapist, and there's some stories you share on stage, and a lot of it has to do with how healed is it. That's one of the big things. And so let's make a distinction between a wound and a scar. From a business standpoint, share your scars. If you're up for it, it's helpful. It builds credibility. Because what the scar shows is that was a wound that has healed.
Oh, I love that distinction. Yeah.
And you're left with a mark, and you say, would you look at that? This thing tried to kill me. And it wasn't strong enough. And I made it, and you can too. And this is painful, but it's not fatal. And here's what I learned about healing this. and I can help you. And here's my credibility. Like, forget the degree. I got this. That's my credibility. So showing off your scars, beautiful. There's all sorts of tattoo artists that will actually take a scar and weave it into a tattoo. It's a really brutal scar, but then instead of trying to hide it, they're featuring it. And so I think marketing can be that. And so what do we do with our wounds? Well, our wounds we show to our friends and our therapists. But I mean, you have to, because it's so important that we do this. I mean, have to. It's just that, I mean, how many people do we know who have wounds and they walk around pretending they don't and pretending they're fine, pretending everything's okay and not talking about it? And that has immense consequences on everybody else because they're not dealing with their shit. So it's so important to have a group of people, to have a community where you're safe enough to share the wound, because by definition, a wound is very vulnerable. A wound is a doorway to the inside of you.
Yes.
Barrier is no longer there. I mean, our skin is helpful. It keeps us all together. And when you get a wound,
I don't think we'll use that quote for the skin is helpful. We've had better quotes out of you, Tad. Sorry, can you go on?
But it's well, let's just say this though, it's a help that we take for granted.
Yes.
We get all sorts of help from the natural world that we just completely take for granted. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the skin that, I mean, I get it. It's funny to say in a way, but just imagine your life without skin.
It wouldn't be pretty.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like, but wait, what would hold in my organ? Exactly. So this is a protective barrier. This is a boundary. And then, well, you think, but that's ridiculous to say living without skin. Okay, try this. Try living without the ability to say no. Try living without boundaries. Try living without any emotional, walls at all. You're just completely open to the world. You're highly sensitive, and then you've been punished for saying no. That's hell.
Yeah.
If you're a highly sensitive person and you are overexposed, and so we develop the skin, and there's emotional skin, and some of us have thinner skin, some of us have thicker skin. That's probably part of our nature as well. But if that is punctured, and it's worth noting that there are certain things in life that even our skin can't contend with. A lot of things it can. I mean, isn't it amazing? You bump into things and it doesn't just break and split open. But there are certain things that do. And that creates a doorway right to the inside of us, which is why, it's not just the pain when you get a serious gash or wound. There's something mortal that kicks in that is like, this should not be like this. There's a terrifying, this is wrong. And all of a sudden the skin, that's just so beautifully closed that we take for granted. It's just, oh no, it's open. It shouldn't be that way. We all know that viscerally. You look at a big gash you get, and it is not supposed to be like this. And I was taking that for granted. Oh my God. As people who have, certain conditions where their skin is just sores all over the place. Oh man. So these are wounds. And so, but if we don't deal with those wounds, that becomes a problem. So it's so important that we cultivate those communities and supports where you can actually unveil it so it can get some healing, so some medicine can be put on, so it can be exposed, and so it doesn't fester over time. And it's good to know what's a wound and what's a scar, and to make sure that we do share our scars with people, because that's inspiring as hell. For people to see a scar of a wound that they're like, I have that kind of wound and I'm pretty sure it's going to kill me. Look, we can get you here. It'll leave a mark, but it's something you can be proud of. And then what's a wound that we really do need to share? so that we can get the healing. Because when the wound is healed, then you have a scar. And in the process of healing it, you've learned something that can then be useful to the community and helping other people heal theirs.
Brilliant. Oh, I love that. I really love the difference between the wound and the scar in that metaphor. And something I often say, so a lot of the work we do is in circle. Even the one-to-one work we do now, we have a circle as well. And it's because very much what you're saying here, it's like the vast majority of wounds happened in relationship and they'll be healed in relationship. And to have a community that's there collectively, intentionally to do that together really allows that to happen in a way that I just don't think is possible to do alone. But I really love that distinction with the scar. I think that's, and I think there can be a tendency again in the coaching world in particular to, because this is kind of like, you know, be vulnerable and all of this. I think sometimes there can be this tendency to be trying to like teach people how to heal what we haven't yet healed, to speak about something whilst it's still a wound, not realizing that's what's happening, but not actually realizing there's still a way to go before the scar's there.
It's the go out and be vulnerable can just be a disaster. You know, go out with a raw wound. Well, are you insane? Like, have you met people? A lot of people are great, but all it takes is one person to stick their finger in there and poke around, you know, well-intended, but their own bad boundaries. It doesn't even need to be malicious to really hurt really badly. So
Yeah.
save that for the healing group. Save that for your therapist and your friends. And when it's ready, you know, then show it off all you want. But I would just advise against vulnerability for vulnerability's sake, or vulnerability because, aha, if I walk around showing this wound, I'm going to get sympathy and pity, and I'll get clients and they'll just think I'm so vulnerable. Okay, roll those dice if you want to, but you may find that the cost of that for you personally is much greater than the benefit you get.
Yeah, beautifully said. So I feel like we could go on and on and on exploring this because it really is like one of my favorite topics in the world, but I know that we need to close. Where can people find out more about you and your wonderful work, Tad?
Thank you. If you go to marketingforhippies.com, there's a bunch of free stuff there. The main thing is I've got a ethical marketing starter kit. It's just on the homepage. It's pretty obvious, but there's also a lot of other free stuff they can check out. And I'm on Instagram at marketingforhippies.
Amazing. Thank you so much as ever. This has been a real pleasure. And I already know this is going to be one that's going to go down so well with everyone listening. So thank you so much, Tad.
You're welcome. Take care.
Lots of love. Bye-bye.